Hey guys, thank you for joining me in this podcast. I'm Bob McGurdy, and I'm a storyteller, and I'm here to tell a story. Today's story is about the chicken man, or in Bengali, the Murgiwala. And I love to tell this story. It's been told across the world, it's shown up in countries across the world. But before I do, let me just make a little comment about the last 2 weeks. When I did my live stream 2 weeks ago, I kind of messed up. I was trying to send an announcement before I had done the video, and there were just some technical glitches that made it a little awkward for me. So thanks for your patience as I'm learning and growing. And then last week, I did not do a live stream. And that was simply because my laptop was in the shop for a week because it needed the battery replaced. So, anyways, I got it back. I'm happy. I'm good. The chicken man. Lived in Bangladesh. I had been in Bangladesh about 7 or 8 years. And, um, and a friend of mine who was a colleague worked together, uh, Rintu Odakari. Rintu was he just headed everything media from television production to radio broadcasts, and just a highly skilled, highly talented person. And Rintu, if you happen to catch this, thank you so much for connecting me to Itadi and the story that I'm going to tell today, but also just thank you for you and what you did for the Assemblies of God and in radio and in broadcast. So appreciate you so much and consider you a friend. Again, been in Bangladesh almost 10 years, and there is a TV program in Bangladesh called Itadi, Ittadi. And you could go on YouTube and look up Itadi and you could see the programs, though the program I'm going to tell you about is not currently available. My friend Shovan Gain, uh, Brother Shovan, I hope it works, is working on getting it released from Itadi. And if so, you will see the actual live show. But I'm going to tell the story about the show and the impact it's had. And when I say the impact, when this show aired, I literally got a phone call from the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. So that'll give you a little idea of reach. But here's how it worked. Rintu was friends with the producer Hanif Shonket, and Hanif is essentially, in those days, I would describe him as the David Letterman of Bangladesh. I do not know how long Itadi has been in production, but in the 90s, I think it had already been at least 10, maybe even as much as 15 years old. And Hanif is the brainchild, the producer, choreographer, designer, set uh, manager. He's everything in one, and just a wonderful person. But Hanif and Rintu are friends, and they were together one day. And Hanif said, "We're going to do a special program on Itadi, and I would love to find some foreigners who can speak Bengali. Do you know any?" And he goes, "Yeah, in fact, one guy, his nickname is Bengali Bob. He works at the Assembly God office. I'll have a conversation with him." So we said, fine. And Rintu said to me, "Hey, do you want to be on Itadi?" And I'm like, "What's an Itadi?" I did not know the program, though I had been there. And I may have heard about it, but really didn't know it. And so he said, well, and he explained the show, a variety program. And Itadi, just for context, it will run an hour long, sometimes a little more or less, depending on the production. And in those days, it would air about every 1 to 2 months, maybe some more frequency, always around holidays. The show would typically come on somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m., which is absolute prime time. Dinner tends to be around 10 o'clock or so. So it was the show. And you have to understand television in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, you had two channels. And the two channels, this was in the mid 90s, were on and off. That was it. BTV, Bangladesh TV, probably over half of the programming was Islamic programming, And then there was news and other programs. The one program I can remember from the 90s was MacGyver. If you're old enough to remember MacGyver, and people would see me, and I guess we both looked alike because we're white. I don't know, but they would say, "Do you know MacGyver? Are you MacGyver?" And everybody liked the show MacGyver. So anyhow, Rintu and Hanif had this conversation, and so my friend Rintu sends me to producer Hanif. Uh, Essentially, it was an interview. I did not know it was an interview. I just felt like we were meeting. I literally am being auditioned. It's an audition. And so Hanif said, "Hey, I understand you speak Bangla." I spoke to him a little in Bangla. He said, "If you did a TV program, what would you do?" And so I did an imitation of what I call the beggar song, when you'd go out in the village and you'd be at a ferry boat waiting, at a ferry crossing, waiting to get on a ferry boat. And sometimes it could be an hour long. People would entertain in hopes of getting money. I don't sing in any language, and not, at least not well. And so when I was doing that, uh, he said, "Well, what else have you got?" So he was definitely not impressed. And I said, "Well, I can imitate the fairy-wallas." The fairy-wallas are people who literally would have a basket on their head and would sell products. And this would fit the Islamic culture. Many times a woman has to stay at home. There's no one to go out and do the marketing. And yet you've got to get the vegetables, you've got to get the products. And so people would sell things in their head, and they would go door to door, and their sound would have a twang, so that you could say, "Oh, that's my guy." And that was the guy you did business with, and you would buy the products. And the products could be tea, it could be staple products, it could literally be live chickens. And this story, the Chicken Man, or Morgiwala in Bangla, is the story that I'm going to tell. So anyhow, enough background introduction to this. He asked me to imitate the fairy-walla. I did. He said, "Game on, let's do this show." So we get to a live audience, pre-recorded, but live audience, and then they can make extra takes before it goes to show. And there were about 700 people in the live audience, and there were a number of people that day. One was a actor and singer named Deepthi Chaudhary, who was in the green room I met. There was another young girl who was in the Guinness World Record for mother-daughter combination longest hair. Like, I think they each had about 10 feet long was their hair, but they were the mother-daughter combo longest. And very shy girl from Kamila, Bangladesh. And so we're in this room, we're chatting, we're getting ready for the show. And the young girl, after a while, gets up her courage, shy girl, and she says, "Me uncle," in Bangla, "Uncle, what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I cut hair for a living." Of course, everybody in there laughed. I felt bad for her. But anyhow, the show goes. And again, if you remember David Letterman, or think, whoever it is that you like to listen to, Jay Leno or Steve Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, whoever it is, and that typical show where the host is in a big desk and then there's a couch. Well, Hanif wouldn't sit, he would stand, but there was a couch there. And so we're on this show, and it's my turn to get up and to share. But he is introducing me to this live audience of 700 or so. And he says, he asked me a couple of questions in Bengali. I answer it. And no props. I don't have the live chickens on my head or whatever. And he says, "I understand that you can do the imitation of the fairy-wallas. Would you mind standing and doing that for us?" So I stand up, and I go into about a 20 or 30-second repeat of this fairy-walla, which I may or may not do it on this show. Maybe I'll do it later. A little rusty on that. It's been 30 years now. And so I do this, and I'm telling you, this audience of 700 got to laughing so hard and just going nuts that I couldn't even finish my routine, which was less than 30 seconds anyways. And so we cut the video, and Hanif lies to me. Sorry, Hanif, if you're listening, you know it's true. And he says, it didn't take. We need to do it again. So we do it a second time, similar result. And, uh, and at the end of it, he says, I have a confession to make to you, Bob. It came out perfect the first time, but the audience enjoyed it so much we did it again. So all well and good. I start to head out, and there's kind of a backstage way of leaving. And all of a sudden, if you think of the old, almost kind of paparazzi where they have the camera and and it's like the flash photography and the bulb and I'm just thinking this is surreal. Why would you want my photo? I just for 30 seconds stood up in front of a couple hundred people. So now it's weeks later and the show is about to air. And here's what happens. Um, Throughout the week, they're doing headshots of me on Bangladesh TV, and I have friends calling and saying, "Hey, heard you're going to be on Itadi. You're going to be on Itadi," and I'm beginning to find how popular it is and what a big deal. Remember, there's only one channel. Literally, at that point, more than 30% of Bangladesh did not even have electricity. In the villages, they would bring the car battery in and hook it up to the TV just to watch Itadi. It was a big deal. So the the American club in Bangladesh, the employees that were there, they talked with the manager and they made an arrangement that the upstairs, what was normally a bar, would be shut down so that they could watch and have aired the Itadi program. They invited me to come and be a part of that. I said, sure, I'd love to. And so we go there. We're at the American Club, and Itadi is on the air, and it's all over. And my brand new cell phone that I'd only had for a few months at that point, I pick up the phone, say hello, and I hang up the phone because I thought it was a prank call. And Hanif, the producer, calls me and says, "Bob, did somebody just call and introduce themselves as the personal assistant to the prime minister?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Don't hang up again. You just hung up on the prime minister of Bangladesh." So I said, "Okay." I take the call, and I probably could have had a conversation with Prime Minister Begum Khalida Zia, but she instead, because I'd already hung up on her once, she says, "Bravo, bravo, shabash, 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 bravo." Means the same thing. So I thought, wow, did that just happen? The prime minister called to congratulate me. So still, I'm not fully in the moment. The next morning, Twyla and I head to the store that we would typically go to that morning, and there is a line by the tens. There was easily 50 to 100 people lined up for my autograph because I was the chicken man, the Morgiwala. And again, still didn't realize this, but over the coming days and weeks and months and literally years, I would be called out, I would be recognized. And the one call when I'd say chicken, chicken, it was like, "Ay murgi, murgi lagbe naki," and it would go on and on. But they would murgi, the word for chicken. They'd see me, and they'd say, "Ay murgi, ay murgi," and I was getting that everywhere I would go in Bangladesh. So I'm known as the Chicken Man in Bangladesh. This show never aired in India, separate country, but in Bangladesh, people that are my age will know me as the Chicken Man. When we were at Missouri State, a lot of the university students, their parents would recognize me. They would want to get on a Zoom call with me. I've been in Dunkin Donuts with friends where people who are from Bangladesh who work at the store will come out of the back and will want to get a photograph, an autograph. One of the funny ones that happened one time, my good friend, Pastor Don James, Don is now the superintendent of the New Jersey network for the Assemblies of God. But when he was the pastor in Wyckoff, New Jersey, we went into the Dunkin Donuts and we're in line. And one of the guys recognized me and he's like, "Oh, apni murgiwala, you're the chicken man." And I just kind of smiled. Next thing you know, Dunkin Donuts is shut down and everybody's getting around me. We're doing selfies. And the lady behind me, in good Jersey attitude, she's like, coffee. I want my coffee. Isn't anybody gonna give me coffee? And the guy returns to her in English, says, "Madam, my country very famous. You are waiting. You are waiting." And and so then it was even more interesting because the people from New Jersey, not the Bangladeshis in the Dunkin' Donuts, are thinking maybe I'm not. I'm from like a movie star from the US. So they start whispering and trying to figure it out. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. We get to the front of the counter, and Pastor Don has bought like a dozen donuts, orange juice, and some things, probably $20 worth of things. And the guy refuses to take his money. And Don's like, no, you can't. If it's a donut or a cup of coffee, he's like, sir, my country very famous. You go now. You go. And but this has happened in so many places over the last 30 years, and too many stories to tell, but just a couple of them. Malaysia, Tony Romas, late at night, waiters recognized me. I ended up going to a late night party with them. New York, my son Bobby and Josiah and I were all in a taxi in New York City. Bangladeshi cab driver recognized us, asked us what we were doing that afternoon, and I figured, oh, we're going to find out. And he found out I was a chicken man. He made some phone calls. We get to his house in one of the boroughs in New York City, and for the next 2 hours, we're eating food, we're entertaining, and there's even a Bangladesh camera crew there taking videos of it. We've been in so many places, and the cool thing about this Morgiwala, this chicken man thing, is it created an identity. I was known as a chicken man. Before that was, how much do you make? Where do you work? Or do you work for the embassy? Can you get me a visa? Now it was like this safe box of, oh, he's the chicken man. We know who he is. I was invited to do several other shows. There was one that I was the medicine guy, and that's another story for another time. Twyla and I were invited to do a village wedding scene, and because there were some government strikes, there was nowhere that we could practice. So we ended up, Hanif with his camera crew came to our house and we practiced on the roof. Then I realized my neighbors, how big a deal it was to them, because they all came out and were clapping, and their whole attitude changed to me because I knew Hanif Shonket. This show, Itadi, included an interview with Princess Diana back in the day. I mean, this was a known, famous celebrity style show. It was about a year or two later, Hanif called me and invited me to a show. And again, Twyla and I were part of this. And we're in this village setting. And they said, Bob, would you like to be a cowboy? And I thought, well, there's an alter ego. And I'm picturing boots and jeans and a horse and all. Well, I was the boy who walked the cow. So a cowboy might be a little different in the Bangladesh setting. And that was good fun. But I just say this as part of this story. It opened doors of conversation, and sometimes the most strangest event can be a door of opportunity. We were in trouble with something with the government, and we had to get permission or approval, and I went into the office, and all of a sudden the guy looks at me and he goes, Itadi. I'm like, yes, Itadi. He says, Morgiwala, chicken man. I said, yes, Morgiwala. He said, oh, we can sign. We can sign. You're a businessman. Just absolutely shocked. But it just opened doors and connectivity. One of the more interesting ones, we were in New York City. We had applied for our visas, and the visa situation living in Bangladesh was that you could get a what we call an entry visa. Then when you get in the country, you work on your visas at 1 year, 2 year, multiple entry, single entry, double entry, whatever. And so we were going to get our entry visa. It just gives you permission, and then you got 30 days to work on your visa. And so we're in line, and my son Josiah's with me, and he's going, Baba, itadi, Baba, itadi. And he's like saying, Dad, itadi. And so he was trying to get a reaction, and people started smiling. And then the lady who was going to accept our application, she said, Itadi. I said, yes. She said, come with me. And so we go into the director's office, and I don't think anything about it. We are just supposed to drop off or pick up some paperwork. That's all we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pick up forms, which you have to officially get assigned a number to the form. And he said, send your son. He said, do you have the dollars that's required for this visa? I said, no. He said, give your ATM card, send your son. I'll send someone with him. You can go get the money. We'll take care of you. Again, I'm just supposed to get the official forms, then fill them out, then come back. And he said, come back in 2 hours. We'll have your visa. And I'm supposed to get an entry visa. And I opened it up, and for the first time in my life, I had a 2-year multiple entry visa. And I just felt convicted. I said, man, I'm not entitled to this. I shouldn't get it. So I go back. I asked for the director, and he says, yes. And I said, you gave me a multiple entry visa. And he said, you have a problem? And I said, well, I'm only supposed to get an entry visa, 30 days, sometimes 90 days, maybe a single or double entry. He said, sir, he said, you're the Morgiwala. I said, yes. He said, Morgiwala is a business. You're a businessman. I gave you a business visa. Um, Chicken Man is a fun story, and you just never know when an opportunity is going to come. And for those of you who are in Bangladesh who are watching this, yes, Amito Morgiwala. আপনাদের অনেক মুরগিওয়ালা আছে কিন্তু আপনি আপনার প্রধান মোরগ. I'm the main chicken man. And guys, I hope with Shovan Gain, my friend's help, we'll be able to get the actual video, which is only about 30 seconds, and you'll get to see me being the chicken man. So the call, real simple, but I'll just do a little short version of it to give you an idea. I stood before the stage, and in front of a live audience of 700, I simply imitated these fairy-wallas saying, "Ay murgi, murgi lagbe naki bacha murgi o morok? Ay kagos, les vida chai," and a few other things like that. God bless you. Can't wait to talk to you next week.